Next agenda item is the work session, board forum. New business. I think that we have to vote for a new president for our board. I'd like to open up nominations now.
I would like to nominate Mr. Hewitt.
I'll second.
Third. Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Like to roll call?
We're gonna do a roll call. Miss Betty,
Yes.
Mrs. Grasso,
Florence, are you there?
circle back to her. Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson,
We're voting for him.
correct.
Yes. I just wanted to.
Mrs. McVeigh,
Yes.
Mr. Vox,
Yes.
and Miss Crystal Martin.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Your tenure as president
Shortest ever.
Was it fun?
was very effectual. Good job.
She may have been the most effectual president we've ever had.
Just so I have it down, Betty Ann, you were the recommendation, and Lisa, you were the second, right? All right, thank you.
I don't know if I would go so strong to say recommendation. I nominated him. I don't know if I recommend him.
Well, that's the city.
All's right with well.
New business. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your nomination and vote of confidence, and I will do my best to serve you well. All right, so is there anything else for new business? All right, seeing there's none, we'll go to old business. Anything for old business? All right, then we will move on to presentations, and we have a school ethics training by Tim Tehan from the New Jersey School Boards Association. So welcome, Tim, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Congratulations on the presidency, and congratulations, I've never seen anyone move out of a seat so fast.
Slightly.
You need the microphone, though, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Either one, I don't care. Let me just make sure I can click. Yep, I can. Perfect. All right. Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. I am Tim Tehan from New Jersey School Boards, and tonight we're doing ethics. So just to start off with a disclaimer, this is legal information. It's not legal advice or legal opinions. You only get that from your board attorney. But this whole presentation was created by the Field Service Department along with the New Jersey School Board's legal team. So everything in here there's a PDF of it. I don't know if that was sent out to all of you yet, but that PDF is hyperlinked. So every single case that's in here is a hyperlink, so you can read more about the cases. What you'll see in this presentation are short blurbs of a couple of sentences to describe it. Attorneys like to write a lot, so when you look at these decisions, you will see that they're usually anywhere from like 3 to 20 pages long. So you can read a lot more in depth into each one of the cases if you choose to. So the School Ethics Act is created by the School Ethics Commission. It's not created by New Jersey school boards. We are not the ethics police. A lot of people think, you know, when they come to us, they say, oh, what would be your decision on this? There is no decision because that's not our job. That is a School Ethics Commission. And so the act was put into place really to make sure that board members had those guardrails and they knew what they could or couldn't do, and to make sure that that was in place so that your community would have faith that you as a board and board members were doing the right things. So who enforces the act? Once again, not New Jersey school boards, it's the School Ethics Commission, also known as the SEC, and is not the Securities and Exchange Commission, because in education, we are not very creative with our acronyms. So this is one that's called the School Ethics Commission, SEC. It's supposed to be made up of 9 members, but currently there's only 6. That's okay. There's only 6. It's broken down into 5 that are appointed, 2 that are board members, and 2 that are school officials. And when the slide comes back up, you'll see that there's vacant seats. Out of the total of 9 seats, 3 of them are currently vacant. And they've been vacant for a couple of years. There was actually 4 that were vacant. And since these are appointed by the governor, it's up to the governor to fill those positions. It's also people that are interested in it would have to submit their name that they are interested. And usually people say, can I submit it to you? No, don't give it to me. I have no power. You have to submit it to some legislator, whoever legislator is part of your district, that's who you would send it to. So prior to just recently, in I think it was January or February, there was only 5 members that were appointed. And so when you think about a board, you need a quorum to be able to do anything. So they would need to have everyone at their meetings in order to be able to take action. That number is going to be very important for the number 6 when we talk about advisory opinions. So we'll get to that in a second. So there is currently 1 seat vacant for school administrators, and both seats for school board members are vacant. So if you're interested, reach out to your legislator and maybe they can guide you. So within School Ethics Commission, there's 4 main areas that we're going to focus on. Mandatory training, code of ethics, disclosure statements, and prohibited acts. These are the 4 things that you as board members are required to do and adhere to. When you look at this on the right, it says all school officials, and on the left it says board members, trustees only. You as board members are all 4, but your administrative team or your school officials, your business administrator, your superintendent, anyone that holds an administrator certification in your district is required to do the 2 on the right, prohibited acts and disclosure statements. Now, they do not need to do mandatory training, and they do not need to adhere to the code of ethics. However, there's a whole set of other ethics that they have to abide by, but they're not have to adhere to these code of ethics, but they are the same. So we're going to go through all of those. So the mandatory training, there's 4 different trainings, and we're real creative with the names. It's Governance 1, Governance 2, Governance 3, and Governance 4. Governance 1, as a board member, a brand new board member, you have to do that within the first 90 days of being sworn in. And some people think it's from the time that they're elected. It's not when you're elected, and it's not when, if the board does an interview and they say, oh, this is who we want. It's when you're actually sworn in. That's when your time clock starts. So you have 90 days to do that training, and it is a basic training. It gets you up and running. It gives you some foundational information in all the different areas that you're going to come in contact with as a board member. By the end of year 2, so the second year of your first term, you have to take Governance 2, which focuses on finance and student achievement. By the end of year 3, the third year of your first term, you have to take Governance 3, which is policy and labor relations. And the reason why that's there is because sometime within probably 3 years, you're going to be involved in some kind of negotiations, whether it be with your Principal Supervisors Association, Teachers Union, whatever other unions you have within the district, you're going to be involved in labor relations. So this gives you some background information on that as well. Every time you're reelected as a board member, you have to take Governance 4, and that is legal updates. Now, some board members love to take Governance 4 every single year. You could take all 4 of these in your first year as a board member. However, when it comes time for that time slot, you have to take it. So if you take Governance 4 in your first year, when you get reelected, you still have to take Governance 4. So even if you took it year 1, year 2, year 3, you still have to take it year 4, okay? We try at New Jersey School Boards try to create the opportunities for you to take these trainings in many different ways. Some people prefer an in-person format, we offer those. Some people prefer a live session but have it be virtual, we offer those. And some people would rather do a self-paced online, we offer those. We also have, for the new board member, we actually have a new board member orientation weekend. So that's a little more in depth on that Governance 1, but it's an opportunity for board members to kind of network with other board members across the state. So if you're interested in doing something like that, or you have a new board member that's interested in doing that, they can sign up for that as well. So once you're appointed as a board member, or every year as a board member, you have to fill out what's called a financial and personal relative disclosure statement. It used to be paper and pen, and now it is, and I haven't heard of anywhere it's not electronic. Generally, your business administrator will send you an email, and they will ask you to fill it out. My best suggestion for you is when you fill it out, print it, keep a copy of it, so that next year when you have to do it, you can go back to that one, okay? Because some of your information may have changed, but at least you'll have the information of what you entered the first time. If you enter something and it's wrong, realize when you hit submit, it actually doesn't go right to the state. It actually goes to the business administrator who will review it. And if something's not right, they will let you know, and they'll kick it back to you. So as a brand new board member, you have 30 days from the date that you're sworn in to fill that out. And every year as board members, you have to fill it out by April 30th of each year. That is a CUSAC requirement. So if you're in CUSAC, or in CUSAC this coming year, they do a full year look back, 12-month look back. So if you want to make sure that you're on time with that as well. And there are some cases for the financial disclosure cases that have to do on focusing on this, where board members either put the wrong information in, or didn't do it. And the reason why it's important to be complete in all your answers is because when there is an ethics case or an advisory opinion, they will go back, the School Ethics Commission will go back to these financial disclosure statements to help guide you in whether something that you want to do or you did, whether you can or can't do it. And so these are one of the reasons why these are important. Realize though, with the financial disclosure statements, they're not going to ask you how much money you make. They're simply going to ask you, where are your resources of income coming from? So it's not too involved. Oh, and each one of these cases, I'll go back one. You see where it says C8524? That is a hyperlink, so that's to that case. When you see the letter C, that means it's an ethics complaint. When you see the letter A, that means it's an advisory opinion. So anytime you see these are all hyperlinks. Once again, it gets into a lot more detail. You're also going to see the decision when there's when somebody may have misstepped. You're going to either see recommended, whatever the penalty is, or you're just going to see the penalty. When you see recommended, that means it's gone through the first of the 2 levels of review. The first level is the School Ethics Commission. The second level is the Commissioner of Education. So when, like in this case, when you see this one, it says recommended reprimand, it means it's been through the first level, but it has not been approved by the Commissioner of Education. The Commissioner of Education can take it as it is and say, yes, I agree with the reprimand, and that's it. That's what it's going to be. They can also modify it, either making it less or more. That's up to them based upon the situation that's there. So we're going to go through the tenets of the Code of Ethics. And when you look at these, once again, these are not just something that we put together. These are actually from statute and code. So when you look at the top part, all of those come from statute, which is 18A. And when you look at the bottom part, that's all from code, which is 6A. So when you think about the top part, that's telling you what you can or can't do. And the bottom part is saying, if somebody missteps and violates the top part, and somebody submits an ethics complaint, they have to submit based upon that bottom part, which is the factual evidence that has to be submitted. So in other words, somebody can't just simply say, I think somebody violated a code of ethics. You've got to identify which one it is. You've got to identify and supply all the different pieces of evidence that would support your position. So the very first one is that you are required to uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations. You might not like them, you might not agree with them, but you're still required to follow them. If you don't like a law, rule, or regulation, there are avenues that you can pursue within politics or within the legal arenas where you can possibly change some of those, but until they're changed, you are required to follow those. The second one is that as a board member, your decisions have to be in the best interest of all students. That's the number one reason why we're here. Whether you're a board member, a teacher, a custodian, a principal, it doesn't matter who you are working in this school district, you are here for the students. So all your decisions as a board have to be in the best interest of all students. The third one is that as a board member, yours is more of that balcony perspective. So there's three main areas that you focus on, which is policy making, planning, and appraisal. Policy making is probably, out of all the things that you do, it's one of the most important things that you do. It is also probably one of the blandest things that you do. When you look at your policies, you may say, it's kind of boring. But policies are so important because when something happens in the district, the very first place anyone should go to is your policy. Because your policy is going to tell you what should happen. What is the expectation when they're presented with a certain situation. It also will allow consistency. So in other words, somebody won't do this for person A and then do something different for person B and something different for person C. If they're following the policy, it will be the same outcome regardless, and the same process and procedure. Planning actually happens in many different ways. When you talk about district goals, that's planning. If you have board goals, that's planning. If you have a budget, which I don't know of any district that doesn't, that's planning. So planning is all around you. If you have a strategic plan, that's planning. So that's your job as a board, is to be involved in that. And then the last one is appraisal. And that means you only evaluate one person in the district, and that's the superintendent of schools. It's your superintendent's job to evaluate everybody else in the district. So in other words, as a board member, you can't say, well, I like that principal, I don't like that principal. You're appraising them, you're evaluating them, and that's out of the scope of what your job is as a board member. The next one is that your job is not to administer the schools, and this is probably an area where a lot of board members have difficulty. They step over the line, and what I always say, the easiest gauge for this is to ask yourself this question. Is this, whatever it is that's presented to you, is this a what or a how? You are the what. You are that balcony perspective. You are that more overarching or oversight of everything that goes on. That's the what. How it's done is up to your administrative team. So if you're doing the how, in other words, if I say, as a board member, if I say, we need more challenging courses in our high school. Okay, that's a what. That's good. If you say, we need this course, and you name it, this course and this course, guess what? You just became the how. So the overarching, we need more challenging courses. It's then up to administration to decide how they're going to do that. The next one is that you cannot make personal promises nor take any private action. You as a board operate by a quorum at a legally advertised board meeting where you have agenda items that you can take action on. That's what you do as a board, not as an individual board member. You can also not make personal promises. You can't be out at the local Wawa, have somebody come up to you and say, oh, I have this concern, and you say, don't worry, I'm going to take care of that. That's not your role, okay? Everything is done here at the board table with the full board. You cannot cater basically to special interest or political groups. Yes, we know politics are slowly making their way, or maybe not so slowly making their way into the school districts. That's where it should be. It should be outside the school districts. The same thing as special interest. Now, do they have a place? They absolutely do. However, their focus and what they find important to them is based upon what their area is. Your area is students. So everything you do should be based upon the students. And yes, sometimes there's an overlap of those two, but you're never supposed to be catering to those special interests. Try that again. There we go. The next one, and to me this is the most important one, which is confidentiality. As a board, you have something called executive session. Things go on in executive session. The reason why it goes on in executive session is because that information that you're going through there is not privy to the general public. Even your minutes to your executive session are very broad. They're not very detailed, and that's purposeful. It's not supposed to be. I've heard some board members sometimes say, well, we want more details in the executive session, minutes. No, that's not what you're supposed to do. So it's kind of like Vegas. Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Whatever happens in executive session stays in executive session. You don't talk about it afterwards. You talk about it only during that executive session. And you only focus on those items that are in executive session. You don't deviate off the list. You also have to think about the things and the information that you receive from your superintendent is confidential. The same thing is if you're having discussions, it's confidential. So don't be going out on social media or in the, like I said, the Wawa or in the neighborhood at a sports event and start talking about board business, because then you're actually breaking that confidentiality. Not only is it a violation of the code of ethics, but it's a surefire way to cause a division within the board as a result of that, where people do not trust each other and then information is not readily shared. Your job is to appoint the best qualified personnel. So your job is not to interview all these people. Your job is not to look through all the resumes of the individuals that applied for a given position. Your job is to say, okay, this is the person that the superintendent is recommending, and that's why it usually says on your agenda, by recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Your job is to make sure that they have the proper credential for whatever that job is. And please note that there are jobs sometimes where you post it and you may only get one applicant for the position. That is the best qualified person, because it's the only person that applied for it. Your next one is to support and protect school personnel. I always go with what my mother raised us with, was if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. It really works well for this, because once again, you may have an opinion about any of your staff, your personnel that are in the district. Remember, you only evaluate one person, and that's through the normal procedures of evaluation of your superintendent. You don't evaluate anyone else. Whether you're saying positive or negative things, that is an evaluation. Your job is to protect your school personnel. So if your school personnel do something wrong, and I've had this, that's why a lot of districts will have no comment, because you're protecting your staff. That doesn't mean you're allowing them to get away with whatever, you're just protecting them, and that's the way you protect them, and that's the way you protect your district. I had one district where there was a major incident, alleged incident that happened with a student where there was a claim that the student was inappropriately touched by a staff member. Of course, at the next board meeting, you can imagine what that was like. All these people got up, they started complaining and saying this shouldn't happen, this shouldn't happen. Several board members spoke up and said, something must have went wrong, that should never have happened. Well, when the investigation was finally done, there was no inappropriate action that was taken by a staff member on the student. However, the parents already had a lawsuit that was filed, and they will walk away with money. Why? Because at their board meeting, the board member said somebody must have done something wrong, and they have it on video. So you have to be really careful, and you're not only protecting your students, your staff, but you're protecting your district and yourselves, because every lawsuit obviously comes with a cost. So that's one of the ways that you protect your district, that you're not funneling all this money to that, and instead you're focusing on your students. Yep.
Going back to that one, I've always had a problem with that one, because technically we only, our only employee is the superintendent.
Correct.
So supporting staff seems kind of contradictory to the ethics. Oh, I understand it, but to me it was just always one that I was like, one should be taken out. But anywho, In that situation, hypothetical, if it's staff versus staff, who do you protect? Like if
Both. If it's staff and staff, you're still protecting both.
Even
In other words, you're not going to judgment because that's not your role. Their role is whoever is doing the investigation is to do that investigation, then present the information. It may come up to your level as a board, especially if you're taking action against the staff member, one or more of them. That's when you would become involved in it. Before that, you're not involved in it. And the way that you protect them is you let the process play out. I had a staff member that we had the police come in during the school day and arrest them for something that allegedly happened over the summer. But they waited until school started and they came in and arrested the staff member. And, of course, you could imagine then how many news media outlets and parents were calling and all of that. Had to protect the staff member by saying, sorry, we have no comment. The police are doing what they're going through their process, and when we have something to report, we will report it. That's how you protect them.
thank you.
And it's all personnel. So like, even if you have a bus driver, custodian, secretary, it's everybody. You're protecting them all. There you go. Your job is to refer all complaints to the chief administrative officer, also known as superintendent. You will have, I always say, like, your community members will know that you're on the board. They will probably know your schedule better than you. They will track you down wherever you are so they can share with you their concerns and complaints. Your job is to know your chain of command and then redirect them to the lowest level in the chain of command. 9 times out of 10, that issue can be addressed at the teacher level, because that's usually where the complaints are happening, is in the classroom. Your second part of that job as a board member is to then go to the superintendent and say, just to let you know, I had this parent come to me with this concern. I redirected them to the chain of command, the lowest level, which would be the teacher, and that's it. Your job as a board member is done. That situation may come all the way up to your level, but 9 times out of 10, it doesn't, because it goes through that process. And some people will say, yeah, but we want the issue resolved really quick. So that's why we went right to the top. We went right to the board. The reality is that actually slows down the resolution process, because you as a board member go to the superintendent. The superintendent's not in the classroom. So therefore, the superintendent's going to go to the principal of the building, who's then going to go to the staff member. Staff member is going to listen to that story and go, well, yeah, that's true. However, you're missing this. And they tell another side of the story. And then it has to go back up the chain, call the parent, and the parent comes up, of course, with something else. So you go up and down this chain, whereas if you had redirected the parent to that level, they could have worked with the teacher. If they're not happy with the teacher and the resolution from that, they will go to the next level, which may be the principal. From there, it may be the superintendent, and then eventually it may get to you. When it does get to you, you will hear the complaint that was filed. You will hear the proposed or resolutions, if they had any, that they were going to do. Sometimes the answer or the resolution is everything is being done correctly, and the parent's just not happy with the resolution, or person's not happy with the resolution. It doesn't mean the resolution's wrong. Sometimes things will happen or change along the way, and you'll be made aware of that when it gets to your level. At that point, you as a board would be able to hear the whole case and make a decision. And you'd follow the guidance of your board attorney, who will tell you, what you can and can't do in terms of whatever the situation is. Ethics complaints, you have to file them within a 180-day window. So if you wait 181 days, the School Ethics Commission will not hear it. And that means from the time that the alleged incident took place, the individual can file it 180 days, anytime within that time period. Anyone can file it. So it could be somebody at your board table, it could be somebody in your audience, it could be somebody on a sports field or in your community. If you live stream your meetings, somebody could tune in from outside of your community and they can file an ethics complaint against you. But once again, it's got to go back to that whole thing where they've got to provide the factual evidence. If you're live streaming, they could take a clip or a piece of the meeting, and they could do that. If they're at your meeting, they could record it. Remember, in New Jersey, we're one person recording, so they can record it, and they don't have to tell you they're recording it, and then they can submit that as evidence. There have been an increase of frivolous filings. So when the SEC looks at these cases, they're the ones that make a decision whether they feel it was a frivolous filing or not. And if it is, they can actually impose an up to $500 fine as a result. But some people will ask, is it confidential when somebody files an ethics complaint? The reality is it's not. Initially, when somebody files it, it is, until the SEC looks at the full case and they feel that it's complete, the filing is complete. So if I file it, they're not going to tell the person that was filed against yet that I filed it. They're going to make sure that everything is complete within the filing. Once they make that determination, then it's no longer confidential. They're going to end up reaching out to the person who it was filed against, and they're going to say, now we want to hear your side of the story, because we heard it from the person that filed. They're going to say, okay, so you have a chance to give your side of the story. And they usually give you about 30 days to do that. And they will tell you who's filed it against you. So you hear from both sides of the story, and that's when the SEC makes a decision based upon that. If there's a penalty, and we're going to talk about penalties in a second, if there's a penalty, then that could become public, depending on what level it is.
Is the 180 still, it used to read that it was 180 days from the event or 180 days from when you were made aware of the infraction?
They still say both. They say when a reasonable person would have known and that it occurred. So what some people will say is, oh, I just found out today. But they don't go by when you say you found out. They go by when they feel a reasonable person should have known.
Yep.
So, like if it's out there, let's say the evidence is submitted from a board meeting, technically that's when you should have been aware that there was a violation. So that would start the clock ticking, not a month later when you file it. Yep. Yep, sorry. I hit it. Now we're both hitting it. So there's 4 levels of penalty. The first one is a reprimand. Think of that as like a slap on the wrist. It means that, you as a board member are being told that whatever you did, it was in violation, but it wasn't so egregious. So they're basically telling you, yes, you did something wrong, don't do it again. The next level is more serious, and it's very public. That's a censure, and that's where the board actually has to adopt a resolution naming the board member or members and the tenets of the code of ethics that they violated, and then pass that resolution. The third one is much more serious, and that's a suspension. The SEC will tell you you are not going to be able to be on the board or participate in any board activity for whatever specified amount of time. It could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it's whatever they decide. And then the last one, the more serious one, most serious one is removal, where they will turn to you and say you are no longer a board member. We've actually been seeing more cases with that of board members not completing their mandatory training, and you get the notification from the SEC saying that you are not in compliance, and they will say you need to finish it right away. If you still don't finish it right away, then they are actually removing board members as a result of that. So another plug to do your mandatory training. There we go. Some board members, when an ethics complaint is filed against them, they'll say, oh no, I did everything right. I did everything right. I followed the advice of my counsel, and they try to blame their board attorney. And that may very well be true, because your board attorney, the reason why you rely on your board attorney is because if they do give you wrong information, they're also the ones that have to defend you. So in order to use this advice of counsel defense, you actually have to meet these 4 requirements. The first one is you have to actually receive the advice prior to action. So in other words, you can't do something wrong, then go to your board attorney and say, hey, if I do this, is it wrong? Because you've already done it. So you have to do it before you take the action. The second one is the person that you actually go to actually has the authority to give you that advice. In other words, it's your board attorney. It's not some other attorney that you know. Okay? Your board attorney is the one that provides you as a board your guidance. The third one is that you gave the full story. You didn't leave out some facts, because they're going to give you the advice based upon the information you provide. So if you leave out information, or especially key information, what they would have given you as advice may change based upon the information that you gave. So please, disclose everything to your board attorney when you're asking for their advice. And then the last one is that the individual complied with the advice received. In other words, the board attorney says, yes, you can, or no, you can't do that. and you do the opposite of what they say, okay? You can't use their defense that it's the board attorney's fault as a result. So you have to meet all these 4 in order to be able to use that. And as you read through ethics cases, sometimes you will see this pop up, or somebody will make that claim, and then the SEC will kind of break it down for you, whether it met it or not. So you're going to see a bunch of cases, and like I'm not going to go through all these cases, but like I said, you're going to see the case number. In this case, on this page, it's 2 ethics complaints. And these are just from 2025, but it gives you a short blurb of it. The actual case is a lot longer. And some of these you're going to read, and you're going to say, well, you know, it has nothing to do with us. The thing is, you have to think about, maybe it has nothing to do with you right now. There may be a situation that arises that all of a sudden this case becomes very important to you and may give you insights into what you should or shouldn't do when you're confronted with that same situation. So these are all Code of Ethics cases. So these are pretty general ones. And then when you look at recusal and abstention, you basically have 2 ways that you, besides voting yes on an agenda item, you can also vote no, but you also have these 2 other options, which is recusal and abstention. An abstention you use when you do not have enough information. And a perfect example of this is when you're approving your board minutes from the previous board meeting and you were not present for it. That's when you would say, I'm abstaining from approving those minutes. I wasn't here, so I don't know exactly what was said or what discussion happened. A recusal means even if you wanted to vote on an item, you can't because you're conflicted, meaning that you have something that created a conflict for you that does not allow you to vote on that. Is there a difference with how these are counted in terms of, you know, the votes? Not really in most districts. Some districts they may, but most districts it's not. But what it does, it sends the correct message to your community that you're not just abstaining, you're actually recusing yourself, saying, I can't actually vote on this. Some boards will try, members will try to abstain from a hot button topic. They'll say, I abstain, and they're basically saying, I don't have enough information when they do. They just don't want to vote on it. So your job as a board member is to vote on the agenda items before you. If you don't have enough information, if you can get it ahead of time. But if it's because you weren't there the board meeting before, then that's fine. Relationship definitions, in the papers I gave you, there's a nice little handout that came from an advisory opinion that might give you some guidance on whether you have a relative, what type of relative, and whether it can potentially create a conflict for you or not. When you look at, I always say your relatives, you love them, but they're the ones that are going to create all the problems for you as a board member. Because if you have a relative that's working in the district, it will create conflicts for you. And you're going to figure out what you can or can't be involved in by simply sharing with your board attorney what your particular situation is, the details of it, and then your board attorney can give you the guidance of what you can vote on, what you can be involved in. I said before about advisory opinions. An advisory opinion doesn't become public unless 6 of the SEC board members vote yes to make it public. Now, what it means between private and public is every decision that the SEC makes, they will definitely notify the person that it was filed against to let them know the outcome. However, if they feel that it has a more far-reaching impact, meaning other districts may be in the same situation at some point in time, they publish an advisory opinion and they make it public. They cannot make it public if they don't have 6 board members. Hence the reason why this past year, in 2025, we had 0 public advisory opinions published until December 13th. And we had already done this presentation, and we had to go back and revise it based upon I think it was 20 different, or 20-something different advisory opinions that came out on December 13th. So hopefully now that they have another board member, they will hopefully have enough each board meeting, but we know at board meetings, people don't always show up. So hopefully they'll eventually fill all those seats. I always say, if you think about an ethics complaint is reactive, where an advisory opinion is proactive. An advisory opinion is a school official reaching out to say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this, and before I do it, can you tell me if it's right or wrong? And then an ethics complaint is you already potentially misstepped. You did something, you didn't find out if it was right or wrong, and then you just did whatever it is that you did. So that's the difference between the two. We have this nice little slide because I did have a brand new board member that told me that it's an advisory opinion. It's an opinion, so I don't really need to listen to it. So we use the little graphic of a police officer. If a police officer pulls you over and lets you go with a warning, that is their opinion. That the next time they pull you over for that same thing, they're either going to ticket or arrest you. Well, advisory opinions are the same thing. In all essence, they are basically the rule. You have to follow it. Just because it has the word opinion in it, it means that they're telling you, don't misstep before you misstep. So these are all the advisory opinions that were released in 2025. There's 2 pages of them. Each one is hyperlinked. In previous years, we've had a lot more verbiage for these. We actually brought it down to basically one question so that you can quickly scan through these and say, okay, like, can the board invoke the doctrine of necessity? Oh, well, I don't know, maybe we need to do that one time. So you'll go and read that advisory opinion to see what it says. So, but if you never have to do the doctrine of necessity, or you never even ask yourself if you need it, then that advisory opinion, you don't have to waste the time reading it. So these are all set up this way. And like I said, there's 2 pages of them. So you can, at your leisure, click and read. I personally find them very interesting. When I read all of these cases, I always say sometimes like, wow, how did they come up with that decision? But sometimes when you read the case, the full case, it gives you more insight into it and you can kind of see where they were thinking, most of the time. Benefits. It's not about whether you as a board member actually receive benefits, meaning that you say, well, you know, I want to do this and I won't personally benefit from it, in my opinion, but that's your perception. So you can actually have an ethics violation if the normal perception of somebody in your community is that you would benefit from something. So I'll give you one example. I had a board member in another district who every year, and he asked me the same question every year. He has a paving company and he wants to donate the paving to the district. And he wants to repave all their blacktops and so on and so forth. Very generous. We all know how expensive that is. And he says, well, why can't I do it? And he sought an advisory opinion and they said no. And he's like, but I still want to do it. How is that a benefit to me? I'm the one spending the money. Well, it's free advertising. Because most districts, you approve donations and therefore it's free advertising. So even though he doesn't believe it's a benefit, it technically is a benefit. So if you're thinking of doing something or you're in a situation where you think maybe somebody might think you're benefiting from it, that perception that you might be, check with your board attorney and they can guide you. These are a list of those prohibited acts that you want to avoid. So if you're in one of these situations, for example, the first one, business interest or professional activity in conflict, meaning let's say you have a business and that business is trying to do business with the board, you would recuse yourself in that case. Okay, you would not vote on it because you would be considered conflicted. And these are all prohibited cases, so you can, once again, you can read them at your leisure. Now these are conflict benefit cases, and you're going to see there's a lot of them. Now, hiring and personnel. If you are a board member and you have relatives working in the district, you can absolutely serve on the board. Absolutely. However, it will create a conflict for you, so you're not going to be able to be involved in certain things. However, once you're on the board, you can no longer ever hire a relative because now you're hiring your family and you have nepotism policies for that. You can't do that. In some districts, they've tried to circumvent this by saying, okay, well, I want this person to be hired, and it's a relative, so I'm going to step off the board, get them hired, and then the vacant seat I'm going to refill. You can't. You're circumventing it. Somebody can file an ethics complaint, and you will be found to have violated it. So you cannot have any relatives working in the district after you serve on are on the board. There is a small limited exception to that. If it's a really hard to fill position and the only person that applied for the position happens to be your relative, then your superintendent can contact the executive county superintendent and ask for a one-time waiver where the executive county superintendent will give some guidance to the district on what process they have to do, and then generally then they'll grant that, and then you can hire that person. Once that person is hired, then that now creates a conflict for you. You would have to talk to your board attorney, which will tell you what you can or can't be involved in moving forward. So this is impact on committee assignments. When you have a relative working in the district, it actually does create more than just a conflict for you of whether what you can or can't be involved in or vote on. It has to do with committee assignments as well. So in these cases, and I know this district and I know the board president, she had a child that was an instructional assistant in the district. As a result, she could not be involved in personnel, negotiations, instructional, which is curriculum instruction, or finance committees. She also, if you think about what the role of the board president is, one of your jobs is to appoint all the board members to their different committees. She couldn't do that either. And she was like, well, then why am I the board president? It's a great question, because her powers are really limited as a board president. And in that same district, the board member's spouse also, one of the other board members, their spouse worked in the technology department, which then created a conflict for them as well. And they were not able to be involved in a lot of different things. This same district, out of a 9-member board, only 2 of them were non-conflicted for the superintendent evaluation. So only 2 could do the superintendent evaluation. And that was for a couple years now. The board has had some turnover, so now they're back up to like 6 or 7 that can do the evaluation. So realize that these things are, can have a far-reaching impact when you have a relative. So definitely share it with your board attorney if you do have a relative. This is just a handy little chart for collective bargaining agreement. The way you can look at this is if you have an immediate family member, relative working in the district, then they're obviously going to be a member of whatever union it might be. You cannot actually participate in negotiations, nor will you be able to vote to ratify the contract. So you are absolutely excluded from everything. If you have a relative that works in another district that's also part of that statewide bargaining unit, you're not going to be able to participate in negotiations. However, you may be able to vote to ratify the contract. And the reason for that is because what we know, and it's just the process, when there is contract negotiations going on, whatever bargaining unit it is, they're going to look at settlements across the state. They're going to look at it within your county. They're going to look at it across the state. So even though that relative of yours doesn't work here, whatever district they're in, they will use your settlement as one of those comparables. And they'll say, well, you know, they got a 5% raise, so we want our teachers to get a 5% raise. So that's why you're not allowed to be involved in negotiations. However, once all the terms and conditions are done, generally you will be allowed to vote to ratify the contract. You're just going to get guidance from your attorney. And then if you don't have a relative that works in the district, nor do they work in another district that they're part of a union, guess what? You're on negotiations. And I have one district that has 9 board members. 5 of them are conflicted, 4 are not, and the 4 are brand new board members. So they have their negotiating team of 4 brand new board members. So you really want to be aware of who can and can't be involved in negotiations. And this is just a slide on collective bargaining agreements and campaigns. So if you run as a board member and you get, you have a collective bargaining unit group that endorses you, that's okay. It doesn't exclude you from being involved in negotiations. However, if they give you a financial contribution, that will create a conflict for you and you won't be able to be involved. And once again, follow the advice of your board attorney. Generally, it's 1 year from the time that you get the contribution. As a board member, you can absolutely volunteer in school. That's how a lot of people become a board member. They're very involved in their districts. So there's 2 areas that you have to pay close attention to, which is involvement. How involved are you? How often are you in the building? If you're in there 5 days a week, that's going to give the impression to somebody that you are running the district. So you have to really limit how often you're in the building. And then authority has to do with, are you directing staff members to do something? If you're in a voluntary position where you have to direct somebody, then you should not be volunteering in that position. Let somebody else do the directing. I always equate this also to don't handle the money, because even though you're not stealing. You don't ever want to give somebody the ammunition to say that you are. If you're working a snack shack at a football game or something, guess what? You can make all the hot dogs you want, but just don't take the money. Let somebody else handle that. And these are just some suggestions. These are not requirements, but one of the things we find in districts, these help you as a board, and it helps your superintendent, it helps your district to run smoother. When you as a board member are going to be in the schools for whatever reason, just let your superintendent know so that they're not blindsided that you're in the buildings, because you as board members shouldn't just be going in and out of buildings at will. What happens is when a board member shows up, if the administration of that building don't know that you're coming in, then all of a sudden they're like, why is the board member here? So, and then when you come, make sure you stay focused on whatever purpose it is that you're there. So let's say I'm a parent of a child and I'm going in for a parent-teacher conference. I can just tell the superintendent, hey, I have a parent-teacher conference, just so you know, you can let the principal know or whatever. But then go in and do the parent-teacher conference. Don't come in the media center and say, I noticed there's some lights out in here. I'm gonna go talk to the director of building and grounds and tell him that needs to get fixed. Because guess what? You didn't stay on point and now you just overstepped your job. So stay on point with what you're there for. Social media, the best advice I can give you for social media is stay off of it when it has to do with board business. We are seeing more and more cases of this, and I guarantee you as time goes on, we're gonna see a lot more. The SEC is looking at cases that are being brought forth, and they're looking at content, substance, and context. That's how they make a determination of whether the board member has misstepped or not. But think back to your policy. I said in the very beginning, policies are so important. Your policy generally says, and most policies is the same, they'll say your superintendent is a spokesperson for the district, and the board president is a spokesperson for the board. That means that if there's board business that the board wants to talk about in public, meaning on social media, then it's the board president who should be putting that out, not individual board members. Because if you do, then guess what? You're in violation of your own policy, and therefore that will become an ethics complaint, and it will be founded. So best advice I can give you is steer clear of it. If you want to talk about the weather on there, that's fine. And I gave this example. I said, you can talk about, oh, it's a snow day today. But what you don't want to do is go on and say, oh, there was a snow day today, and that dumb superintendent, canceled school. Because when it comes to snow days, half the people are going to be happy with the decision and half are not. And when I did that example at one board meeting, apparently the superintendent had just gone through that, and somebody did call on that, and he's like, yeah, they said I made the wrong call because it didn't snow. So it does happen, but just keep your comments off of social media. If you are putting a comment on there that has related to board business or has the potential of, you're going to want to use the disclaimer. But think of this, it's not like Monopoly, it's a get out of jail free card. It's not. If you put the disclaimer on there, it still goes back to the content of what you're posting. So don't think, well, I used a disclaimer, so I'm fine. You're not. Okay, it goes back to the content. And these are some social media cases. By all means, read them, especially if you're active on social media. Thanks. And this is the last bit of important information to keep in mind, which is what we're seeing is that board members, like it's part of life, you have a cell phone. Some board members are texting from the board table, or they're on their laptop. Many districts, their agendas are on their laptop, and that's totally fine to have that there. But what you don't want to do is be typing away on your laptop while the board meeting's going on, or texting on your phone. Because what's happening is we're finding more and more that people are filing OPA requests for your personal cell phone data, information, as well as your emails. Because what you may not see is somebody in the audience might be texting at the same time, or another board member might be. And there could be that perception that you're communicating outside the board meeting about board business. So people are actually filing those OPA requests. I always say you are your child's advocate, so just because you're on the board doesn't mean that you don't advocate for your child. That's your number one job. Advocate for your own child by all means. Just because you're a board member, that doesn't mean you can't. What you don't want to do, though, is go into a classroom and say, I'm on the board, to the teacher. because now you're trying to leverage your position. Trust me, they know you're on the board. You don't need to do that, okay? And then we say, if you have a campaign page that you're using for social media, once you get on the board, stop using that page, because all your prior posts, people will look at that and think, oh, the whole board believes that same thing, whatever platform you ran on. And I've had board members that have complained to me about that and said, you know, it takes a lot to get all those followers, so I want to keep using it. Well, it's not me saying it. There was actually an ethics complaint. So go read that case, and then you tell me whether you should still be using that social media page. The last one is if you administer a social media page, meaning like you're the administrator, but you're not posting on it, you could potentially be seen and receive an ethics complaint as a result of that, because the content that's posted on there might reflect back on you. So if it has to do with board business, somebody could say, well, you're the administrator, so you could be possibly feeding the information. And so don't administrate any pages if it has to do with board business. And these are just hyperlinks to some resources that are very helpful. The decisions are all there, so you can go back in time, 2024, 3, 2, 1, so on and so forth. Read them all, get to know them. But you know, the easiest is if you have a question about something that you're thinking of doing and you don't see an ethics case or an advisory opinion, just ask your board attorney or your superintendent or your BA. A lot of people are aware of all of these cases, and so they can kind of direct you. And these are constantly updated. So as we get new updates, we provide them. One of the things that, and this is kind of a plug, but Kathy and Caitlin do coffee, I think it's coffee brew or something they call it, with Kathy and Caitlin in New
What's
Jersey School Board.
Brewing?
What's it called?
I think it's What's Brewing.
What's Brewing, that's it. I knew it was coffee and something.
Or Coffee Talk.
Coffee Talk, something like that.
Yeah.
But they do, I think it's 4 times a year, they do updates, and a lot of the cases have to do with things that are going through. And so it's really informative, and you'll get an idea of potential cases that are coming up that you may be pertinent to what you're dealing with within your district. So kind of that allows you to keep that pulse on, your finger on the pulse of it.
They discuss a lot of HIBs too.
Lot of
HIBs outcomes,
Yep.
which is really interesting. There's actually one July 15th coming up.
Yep, and if you miss it, it's recorded, so you can actually go and look at it at your own convenience. And I do watch them as well. I actually log into them, and if I can't actually go to the actual meeting, I do watch it after it's done, because they are really good attorneys, and they're a fountain of information. And that's it. You know, a thank you, because, you know, we all know that you're paid a lot of money to do this job, but I always say, you know, a nice thank you goes a long way, because you don't actually hear that often in a board, for a board. You know, you hear a lot of the complaints. So thank you for all you do. And the last part is, these are the nicest board meeting chairs I've ever sat in. And so you might not want to have them, because people might come to your board meetings to stay for the entire meeting or even sleep here. These are really nice. Any other questions? Good? Okay, thank you. If you have any questions, reach out. Have a great night.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
It's a rough life, Diane.
All right, we'd like to thank Mr. Tehan from the New Jersey School Boards Association for that presentation on school ethics. We're going to move to item number 6 on our agenda, Residents Forum. Agenda items only. Board policy number 0167 encourages community participation in every meeting. However, the board requests that the public respect a 3-minute time limit when commenting on agenda items. Seeing that there are no residents present, we will move to number 7. Recommend a motion to approve the following personnel item A. May I have a motion?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing that there's no discussion, we'll move to a voice vote.
All right, Miss Betty,
Yes.
is Mrs. Grasso with us? Gonna go with a no, we'll skip over her. Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. McVeigh,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughs,
Yes.
and Miss Crystal Warren.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
All right, moving on to item number 8, which is Residents Forum General Topics. Board policy number 0167 encourages community participation in every meeting. However, the board requests that the public respect a 3-minute time limit when commenting on any topic. Seeing that there are no residents present, we will move on to item number 9, which is convening into executive session number 2. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions? All right, we'll have a roll call vote.
All right, Miss Betty,
Yes.
Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Miss Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. McVeigh,
We need to let the public know that there'll be no action taken afterwards, so that people won't necessarily be waiting around to listen for us to come back.
Yes, I believe as long as we believe that we won't be taking action, then,
I thought every meeting we have to come back for public comment.
You have to come back, but you can say that there will be no action taken. You still have to come back in.
Okay.
That way the
There's no
public's not waiting for us, assuming
To-
we're going
to
to have more
say anything.
motions.
there technically still is a board forum afterwards.
Yeah,
But no
so-
action's taken.
Okay.
okay, yes. So we'll be convening into executive session, but no action will be taken when we return to public session.
All right, we'll start that roll call over. Miss Betty,
Yes.
Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. McVeigh,
Yes.
Mr. Vaughs,
Yes.
and Miss Crystal Warren.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We are going into executive. All right. Then item number 11, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All ayes.
All in
Did you get
favor,
those?
say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No, I want to.
All right, meeting is adjourned.
Take this home and burn it.
I will collect them.